They laughed, they whispered, they pointed, they said you wouldn't make it, and for a while, they were right. You felt it, didn't you? The weight of their doubt, pressing down like chains wrapped around your soul. The sting of betrayal, sharp as a blade sliding between your ribs. The suffocating grip of failure, wrapping itself around your throat like a noose, tightening every time you tried to gasp for air. They watched, waiting for you to break. And maybe, just maybe, you almost did. There was a time when the walls felt like they were closing in. Every step forward was met with 1,000 voices, pulling you back, whispering the same poison. You're not good enough. You never were. And you started to believe them, because every time you reached for something greater, life reached back and ripped it away. Every time you thought you had escaped, you found yourself right back where you started, on your knees, staring at the shattered remains of what could have been. You remember that night, don't you? The moment everything crumbled, the betrayal that turned your stomach to stone, the failure that felt like the final nail in your coffin, the silence of an empty room where once there were people who claimed they'd never leave, the echoes of your own screams bouncing off the walls, but no one came running, no one ever did. And in that darkness you wondered, is this it? Is this how the story ends? You were buried, not beneath earth, but beneath the wreckage of dreams turned to dust. The weight of regret pressing down on your chest so heavy, you thought you'd never stand again. You ran the scenes over and over in your mind. Like a film you couldn't shut off. Every mistake, every misstep, every moment you should have seen it coming. But you didn't. You didn't see the knives hiding behind their smile. You didn't see the storm brewing before it hit. And now, here you are, alone, empty, lost. Maybe they were right about you. Maybe you really aren't strong enough. Maybe you should just stay down, accept your fate. Let the world move on without you. After all, that's what they expect, isn't it? That's what they want. They want to watch you crumble. They want to watch you surrender. They want you to stay broken, because if you ever rise, if you ever become what you were meant to be, then they'll have no power left. And so, a war begins. Not against them. No, they were never the real enemy. The war is within you. A battle between the version of yourself that wants to give up and the one that refuses to die. A battle between the fear that has controlled you for too long and the fire that still smolders in the pit of your soul, waiting for you to unleash it. So tell me, will you surrender, or will you rise? They fed you lies and called it wisdom. They chained you in fear and called it protection. From the moment you could walk, they told you where your steps should lead. From the moment you could dream, they told you which ones were acceptable to chase. They built the walls high around you, whispering sweet deceptions. This is for your own good. Stay safe, stay small, stay where we can watch you. And you, trusting, innocent, unaware, believed them. You didn't see the bars at first. You didn't recognize the cage they placed you in because they made it comfortable. They wrapped it in familiarity, in routine, in expectations dressed as love. And so, you obeyed. You did what you were told. You walked the path they paved, never realizing it led to nowhere, never realizing that every step you took was dictated by those who never wanted you to be free. Because here's the truth they never told you. Your greatness threatened them. Your potential terrified them. Because if you ever broke free, if you ever saw beyond the cage, you would realize that the ones who claimed to protect you were only protecting their control. And so, they fed you their poison in small daily doses. They made you fear the unknown, made you doubt your own instincts. Every time you reached for something bigger, they pulled you back with their warnings. That's not realistic. Be careful. You don't want to fail. Not everyone is meant for greatness. Just be grateful for what you have. They made mediocrity sound noble. They made playing it safe seem wise. And slowly, Piece by piece, you let go of the wild hunger inside you. You silenced your own voice and listened to theirs. You accepted their limits as your own. You clipped your own wings before you ever learned how to fly. And when you looked around, you saw the others, just like you, trapped, conditioned, living inside the same invisible walls. And for a while you thought, this is just how life is. This is what it means to grow up, to be responsible, to fit in. But something inside you never fully died. Some part of you still felt it, the weight of the chains, the aching, restless pull of something greater, the whisper in the back of your mind that kept asking, is this all there is? And when that whisper grew too loud to ignore, when you finally gathered the courage to push against the walls, you saw the truth. They never wanted to protect you. They wanted to contain you, because a person who knows their power cannot be controlled. And a person who refuses to stay small becomes unstoppable. So now the question is, what will you do with this truth? Will you go back to the cage, pretend you never saw beyond the bars? Or will you break free, knowing that the moment you do, you can never go back? You mistook their silence for safety. You mistook their approval for love. But all they ever wanted was to keep you contained. It started with the ones closest to you, the people who should have believed in you, the ones who should have lifted you higher. Parents, teachers, so-called friends, the ones who smiled to your face but never truly saw you, the ones who nodded when you spoke of your dreams but never actually listened, the ones who said, "I'm just looking out for you," when all they were really doing was looking for ways to keep you small. They didn't have to destroy you with hate. They didn't have to break you with fists or fire. No, their weapon of choice was far more subtle, far more insidious. Doubt. A carefully placed word here, a slight hesitation there, a look, a sigh, a pause before they said, "Are you sure about this?" And suddenly the fire in your chest started flickering. Suddenly you weren't so sure anymore. You learned to second-guess yourself before you ever learned to trust your own voice, because every time you spoke of something greater, they made you feel like a fool. Every time you tried to step beyond their comfort zone, they made sure you felt the weight of your ambition, as if it were a crime to want more. Don't set yourself up for disappointment. You're aiming too high. Why can't you just be like everyone else? And when you failed, because of course you would fail at first, they were there, shaking their heads, arms crossed, saying, "See, we told you. We knew this would happen." Not to comfort you, not to help you back up, but to remind you that they were right about you all along. And then the worst part happened, the moment they no longer had to whisper their doubts, because their voices had become your own. The words they planted in your mind took root and grew into something monstrous. Now, even when they weren't around, you still heard them. You're not good enough. You don't have what it takes. You're going to fail, just like they said you would. You became your own captor. You held yourself back before anyone else even had the chance. You settled for less. You apologized for wanting more. You walked into rooms and made yourself smaller, just so you wouldn't make them uncomfortable. And you never questioned it, because for so long, you thought that's just the way things were. That's what love looked like. That's what support felt like. You thought their approval was safety, so you spent your life chasing it. But here's the truth. The only reason they doubted you was because they never had the courage to do what you're about to do. And the only reason you ever doubted yourself was because you let their fear become your own. So now, it's time for a choice. Will you keep letting their voices dictate your life? Will you keep carrying the weight of their fears, their limits, their regrets? Or will you finally silence them and hear your own voice for the first time? You tried, you pushed, you fought, and every time you were knocked back down. At first, you thought it would be different. You thought that the moment you stood up for yourself, the world would shift in your favor. That if you worked hard enough, if you showed them you were serious, If you finally took control of your own destiny, they would have no choice but to respect you. But respect never came. Instead, they laughed, they whispered. They called you reckless, arrogant, naive. They said you were wasting your time, chasing something you could never catch. And when you stumbled, when the first failure hit, as failure always does, they didn't extend a hand to help you up. No, they smiled. They smiled when you stumbled. They cheered when you bled. Because deep down, they never wanted you to rise. They never wanted you to prove them wrong. They needed you to fail, not because they hated you, but because your success would be a mirror reflecting back everything they were too afraid to chase. If you won, they would have to face the truth, that they were the ones who gave up too soon, settled too easily, never dared to take the risks you were willing to take. And so they waited, they watched, eager to see you fall again. And you did, again and again. The world slammed you to the ground, and they pointed at your broken form and said, "See, we told you. We knew this would happen." For a moment you believed them. You thought, maybe they were right. Maybe I was foolish to think I could break free. Maybe I should have just stayed where it was safe. But something inside you, something raw, something ancient, refused to die. Some part of you burned with the knowledge that if you quit now, you would never forgive yourself. That if you stayed down, you would spend the rest of your life haunted by the question, what if? So you stood back up, shaking, bleeding, barely holding yourself together, but you stood. And this time, you didn't rise for them. You didn't rise to prove anything to the ones who doubted you. This time, you rose for yourself, because deep down, you knew. You weren't done yet. You were just getting started. There was a moment, maybe more than one, when quitting seemed easier, when the weight of it all became unbearable, when the world had beaten you down so many times that standing back up felt impossible. It wasn't just the failure, it was the exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones, into your soul, making every step feel heavier than the last. You did everything you could. You fought, you sacrificed, you poured your heart into it, and still, it wasn't enough. Still life spit in your face. Still they watched from the sideline, smirking, whispering, waiting for the inevitable collapse. And for the first time, you thought about giving them what they wanted. The nights were the worst. The silence, the stillness, the moments where the battle wasn't against them, but against your own thoughts. When the whispers weren't coming from the outside anymore, but from inside, your own mind, telling you to stop, telling you to let it go, telling you that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't meant for you. You stood at the edge of the abyss, staring into nothingness, and for a moment, you thought about letting go of the fight, letting go of the struggle, letting go of the version of yourself that once believed things could be different, because maybe they were right. Maybe you weren't built for this. Maybe you should just surrender to the life they wanted for you. And yet, something held you back. Something deep inside, buried beneath the pain, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the endless scars. A voice, not loud, not forceful, but steady. A whisper in the darkness, telling you that this moment, this pain, this breaking point, was not the end. Because what you didn't know then was that this moment, the one where you felt the weakest, was actually the moment you were being remade. This was the fire. This was the storm. This was the breaking of everything soft, everything weak, everything that was never meant to survive the road ahead. And if you survived this, if you found the strength to take even one more step forward, then you would become something they never saw coming, something unstoppable. There was one person above all others, who was supposed to stand by you, the one who said they believed in you, who promised they'd never leave, who swore they'd be there when no one else was. And when the world turned its back on you, you turned to them, believing, hoping that they would be different, that they would fight for you the way you had fought for them. But they didn't. Maybe it was a slow betrayal, a shift you felt but ignored, hoping it wasn't real. Maybe it was the way their words started to sound like the voices of doubt you had fought so hard to silence. The hesitation in their support, the half-hearted encouragement, the way their presence felt like a weight instead of a refuge. Or maybe it was sudden, a knife in the back you never saw coming, a moment that changed everything in an instant, a betrayal so sharp it stole the air from your lungs, and you learned the hard way. Not all who smile at you stand with you. Some people were only with you when it was easy, when you were weak, when you needed them, when your presence made them feel strong. But the moment you started rising, the moment you showed even a glimpse of what you were becoming, they changed. Maybe it was jealousy, maybe it was fear, maybe it was the simple, cruel truth that some people never wanted you to succeed. They only wanted you close enough to control. And so they did what they had to do. They abandoned you, lied to you, cut you down when you needed them most. They watched you drown and didn't lift a hand to pull you back up. Maybe they even pushed you deeper, ensuring that if you ever rose again, it wouldn't be beside them. For a while, the pain was unbearable, not just because they left, but because they were never truly with you to begin with, because you had built something real in your heart, while they had only ever been holding a mask, and you hated them for it. You hated them for making you believe, for making you trust, for making you love. But betrayal is a gift, because in the moment they walked away, in the moment they left you bleeding, they freed you. They exposed themselves for who they truly were, and in doing so, they now cut the final thread, tying you to the past. And now you stand alone, but not weak, not broken, because when they walked away, they thought they destroyed you. But what they really did was set you free. Something snapped inside you. For so long you waited for someone to see you, to reach out, to lift you up, to tell you that you were meant for more. You spent years searching for a hand to pull you from the wreckage, a voice to tell you that you weren't alone, that you still had a chance. You waited for validation, for permission, for a Messi corn savior, but no one came. And in that moment, the moment you finally understood what that meant, the fire ignited. Because no one was coming to save you. No one was going to hand you the life you wanted. No one was going to carry you to greatness. And as the realization settled into your bones, it didn't break you. It freed you. You were the hero you had been waiting for all along. The fire that had been smoldering inside you, buried beneath doubt, beneath betrayal, beneath years of conditioning, finally roared to life. The weight you had been carrying, the expectations, the guilt, the past, burned to ash. The fear that once kept you in chains melted in the heat of your awakening. This was the moment you chose. You chose to stop explaining yourself, to stop apologizing, to stop shrinking, to fit inside the small, suffocating world they built for you. You chose to stand the hell up and take back everything they said you could never have. You weren't asking anymore. You weren't hoping or wishing or waiting for approval. You weren't playing their game, following their rule, living inside their limits. You became unstoppable, and they saw it. The shift, the fire in your eyes, the unshakable, undeniable knowing that you were no longer someone they could control, that you were no longer bound by their doubt, their betrayals, their expectations, and that terrified them. Because once a person realizes their own power, they become dangerous, uncontrollable, untouchable, and for the first time, they were afraid of you. You burned everything that kept you weak, every doubt they planted in your mind, every fear they fed you, every lie you told yourself to stay small, to stay safe, to stay acceptable in a world that was never meant to contain you. You set it all on fire. Every piece of the old self that once begged for permission, that once sought validation, that once feared standing alone, because they made a mistake when they didn't finish you. They should have never let you get back up. They should have never left you breathing. Because now you are not coming back as the same person. The version of you that they laughed at, that they doubted, that they betrayed, no longer exists. You buried that version in the ashes of your past. You killed every weakness, every hesitation, every trace of the person they once controlled. And from those ashes, something else emerged. Something sharper, harder, unbreakable. The pain they tried to use against you. It became your fuel. Every scar, every wound, every night spent drowning in your own darkness. You turned it all into power. You sharpened your mind into a blade, your soul into armor. You no longer flinch at failure. You no longer fear loss. You no longer beg for acceptance, because now you are the fire. You walk with a different energy, a force they can feel before you even enter the room. They don't know what changed, but they know something is different. They feel the shift. They tried to break you. Instead, they built a monster they will never be able to stop. You rebuilt yourself from the ashes, no longer soft, no longer fragile, no longer the version of you that hesitated, that apologized, that waited for the world to give permission. That person was gone, burned away in the fire of everything you lost. And what remained? Something unshakable. Discipline became your foundation. No more wasted days, no more excuses, no more hoping for things to change. You put in the work, the brutal, relentless, thankless work, while the world slept, while they doubted, while they whispered that you'd never make it. You were a building. You sacrificed comfort for growth. You traded distractions for purpose. You embraced the grind that they ran from, and relentlessness became your fuel. You stopped asking if you were capable. You stopped questioning whether you had what it took, because you knew you would either win or you would keep going until you did. No quitting, no surrender, no way out but through. Your mind, once filled with doubt, became a weapon. You sharpened it into a blade. You no longer entertained weakness, self-pity, or fear. Where others saw obstacles, you saw opportunity. Where others gave up, you pushed forward. And when pain came, because it always does, you didn't run from it. You embraced it. You became stronger because of it. Your soul, once fragile, became steel. You don't bend. You don't break. You don't beg for things to get easier, because you don't need easy anymore. You have need to become something greater, something unstoppable, something they never saw coming. And now, as they watch you rise, they don't see the same person they once doubted. They see a force they will never be able to contain. The tables have turned. The same people who laughed at you, who doubted you, who watched you struggle and felt nothing. Now they watch you rise. Can they feel everything? The fear in their eyes is unmistakable. They don't say it out loud, but you can feel it. The way they shift in their seats when you walk into the room. The way their voices change when they speak to you. The hesitation in their words. The nervous glances. They know. They know they can't talk to you the way they used to. They know they can't control you anymore. Because you once begged for their approval. You once shrank yourself to fit inside their small, comfortable world. You once sought their validation, desperate to prove you were worthy, desperate to be accepted. But now they beg for your recognition. The same ones who said you wouldn't make it. Now they act like they've always believed in you. The same ones who doubted you. Now they want to be associated with you. They rewrite history in their minds, pretending they always saw your potential, pretending they were always in your corner. But you know the truth. You remember every word, every betrayal, every moment they left you for dead. And you don't seek revenge. You don't need to. Your success is the revenge. The life you've built, the unshakable power you carry, the way you move through the world now with purpose, confidence, and a mind sharper than steel. That is the greatest punishment they could ever receive, because now they see what they lost. They see what they underestimated. They see the person they never thought you would become. And the worst part? There's nothing they can do about it. The same ones who mocked you, who treated your struggle like a joke, who stood on the sidelines waiting for you to fail, they are the ones watching now. But this time, there is no laughter, no whispers, no smug grins, because you went from being their entertainment to becoming their nightmare. Once they enjoyed your pain, they reveled in your failures, delighted in your setbacks, fed off your moments of weakness. Your struggles were a show to them, something to watch, something to gossip about, something to make them feel better about their own empty, stagnant lives. But now they watch for a different reason. They don't watch because they want you to fail. They watch because they are afraid you never will. They are glued to your every move, every victory, every step forward. They stalk in silence, pretending they don't see you, pretending they don't care. But you know the truth. You see them, you feel their eyes on you, you hear their voices, quieter now, uncertain, filled with something they don't want to admit. Regret. They regret doubting you. They regret not believing in you. They regret every moment they wasted watching instead of becoming. But it's too late for them now, because the show is over. You are no longer here to entertain them. Now you are off the force they will never be able to ignore. You never needed to fight them. You never needed to argue, to prove yourself, to scream back at the ones who doubted you. You never had to chase revenge, never had to waste energy trying to make them see what you always knew deep down, that you were built for more, because your success did it for you. The sound of your success is louder than their words ever were. Every doubt they spoke, every insult they threw, every time they looked at you with condescension, it all fades now beneath the undeniable roar of what you've become. They don't have to admit they were wrong. You see it in their silence. You feel it in the way they no longer have anything to say. You watch as they struggle to pretend they don't notice, even as they can't stop watching. This is the revenge they never saw coming. Not anger, not confrontation, not sinking to their level, just winning. Winning in a way so undeniable, so overwhelming, so final, that there is nothing left for them to do but sit in the shadows of their own mediocrity and wonder how they let you slip away. They wanted to watch you lose. Now they have no choice but to watch you win. To you, still trapped in the dark, I see you. I was you. But hear me now. The pain is not your prison. It's your proving ground. This is where the speech shifts. No longer about them, the ones who doubted, the ones who betrayed, the ones who wanted you to fail. Now it's about the next person, the one still lost, the one still suffering, the one who right now is exactly where you once were, drowning in doubt, suffocating under failure, convinced that this is the end. But listen carefully. Everything you are feeling, the exhaustion, the heartbreak, the anger, the hopelessness, it is not here to break you. It is here to shape you. Every scar you carry, every tear you've shed, every moment where you thought you wouldn't survive, it's all preparing you for something greater. You think you're weak because you're in pain. You think you're lost because nothing is going right. You think this means you weren't meant to rise. You couldn't be more wrong. This is the test, the one that separates those who stay in the dark from those who use the darkness to forge themselves into something unstoppable. This is the fire that burns away everything holding you back. This is the moment where you decide, will this destroy you or will this make you? Because if you choose to fight, if you choose to rise, if you choose to refuse every lie they ever told you, then one day, the ones who once looked down on you will look up at you. One day, they will see what they never thought possible. And when that day comes, remember this. They wanted to watch you lose. Now they can't stop watching you win. So tell me, what will you do next? They wanted to watch you lose. They gathered in the shadows, whispering, waiting, convinced they would witness your downfall. They laughed at your failures. They fed off your struggles. They thought they knew how your story would end. But now they can't stop watching you win. They don't talk like they used to. They don't laugh like they once did. Instead, they watch, silent, stunned, unable to look away. Because the same person they doubted, the same person they tried to break, became the force they will never be able to stop. And this is only the beginning. Because now, it's not about them anymore. Now it's about you. What will you do next? You've already proven them wrong. You've already risen from the ashes. You've already built yourself into something they never saw coming. But winning isn't just about proving a point. It isn't just about silencing those who doubted you. It's about what you build from here. So now, the challenge is yours. Will you stay satisfied, basking in the victory they never wanted you to have? Or will you push further, rise higher, chase the impossible, and create a legacy that no one, not them, not the world, not even your old self, could have ever imagined? The choice is yours. But remember this, you are unstoppable now. You are no longer the victim. You are no longer the one who was left behind, overlooked, underestimated. The person they doubted no longer exists. The person who once begged for approval, who once waited for permission, who once believed they were powerless, is gone. In their place stands a force that shatters limits. You don't just break barriers. You can obliterate them. You don't just rise. You can ascend beyond what they ever thought possible. You don't just prove them wrong. You don't rewrite the entire narrative. And now, they will remember your name. The world will never see you the same way again. The ones who doubted you, the ones who betrayed you, the ones who watched and waited for your downfall, they will never forget the moment you proved them all wrong, because they tried to bury you. But you were a seed. Every failure, every setback, every betrayal, they weren't the end. They were the beginning. The soil that covered you wasn't your grave. It was the ground from which you would rise. And now, you stand tall, unshakable, undeniable. But this isn't where the story ends. This isn't the final chapter, because now, the future is in your hands. This is your story now. Go write your next chapter.